In today's video, we have the latest trade talk around the Edmonton Oilers. What will they do for a goaltending situation? We also have the latest updates on the Montreal Canadiens and the Vancouver Canucks. Plus, we have other news from the NHL waiver wire. We have a few signings, some injury updates, and a significant American Hockey League extension that will serve, hopefully, to help the NHL down the road as well. We'll discuss all that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to talk about today. Let's kick things off with news from the NHL waiver wire. Both of these players are connected to the Edmonton Oilers, at least for the time being. The Oilers have placed young forward Tim Soderlund on unconditional waivers for the purpose of contract termination. He had been playing in the minors, split his time between the AHL and the East Coast League. More than likely, he's likely heading back to Europe for more of an opportunity, and they're mutually agreeing to terminate that contract. So nothing real earth-shattering there, but they've also placed Kyle Turris on waivers. Now, Turris really, ever since he's left Ottawa, has not been the same player. Did okay in Nashville for a while, but then eventually fell out of favor, got bought out, and ended up in Edmonton, and it's been kind of up and down, rocky, not very consistent, and this is not the first time he's been on waivers as well. So to me, the Oilers are likely doing this to clear money to bring in another player, whether that be a Vander Kane that they've been rumored to be signing. Of course, that's not going to take place until he gets clearance from the NHL, depending if he ends up being suspended or not, or how that's going to work. Or they may be clearing some space here to maybe make a goalie move. Who knows? We'll discuss that a little bit further in the video, but for right now, Turris is on waivers, and we will find out at 2 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow if he's going to be able to be demoted to their taxi squad or the minors, or if he gets picked up by another NHL club. A couple quick signings today as well. Nothing too major, but longtime NHL player Justin Abdelkader, who played his entire career with the Detroit Red Wings, has not been playing professional hockey for the last little while, is attempting a comeback. He gets an American Hockey League tryout with the Red Wings organization in Grand Rapids, so certainly no guarantees. If he does turn that into a good performance, he could get an AHL contract, and then if that goes well, eventually maybe get a two-way contract, but hard to say exactly what it'll be. I think a lot of the reason why he got bought out was because the contract was very unfavorable. Another example of a long-term Ken Holland deal in Detroit. There was a lot of them there at the end of his tenure that really just did not bode well and was way too much money for what kind of production you get out of those players. But he is attempting a comeback, and we'll certainly wish him the best there. And the Carolina Hurricanes have extended defenseman Jalen Chatfield, who they signed as an unrestricted free agent, formerly of the Canucks. He gets a 2-year, two-way contract. He's mostly played in the AHL this year, but done extremely well. They're very pleased with him. And even though it's a two-way contract, he gets the bigger AHL salary, $250,000, $750,000 at the NHL level, but there is a $300,000 guaranteed amount that he'll earn as well. So that certainly helps him pretty much be guaranteed some NHL time, and if he doesn't get NHL time, he's still going to earn more money either way. So it's a bigger version of a two-way deal, even though it's not one way, which is ideally what he'd want. It's the closest you can get, I guess, the next best thing for some of these guys that are kind of fringe players, still trying to find a way. But he is 25 now. You can't really call him a prospect anymore. Has a little bit of NHL experience under his belt, but clearly the Canes see him as being a potential piece for the future, and it's not a contract that's going to weigh them down if things don't materialize to the way they are expecting. Now, as I mentioned, some injuries and a couple significant ones too. The Habs are going to be without goaltender Jake Allen for approximately 8 weeks. He's already been out of action for a little while. It looks like he probably tweaked a groin or something to that effect when he left the game a couple games back when he was hurt. They haven't exactly clear-cut said what the injury is. It said it's a lower body injury, which was obviously clear and apparent when he left the game when he was originally hurt. But now at least we know the timelines that he's dealing with. So that's 2 months. That puts him pretty much right around the time of the NHL trade deadline. And clearly, he's a guy that many expected, and me included in that, to at least gain a lot of interest from other NHL teams. I was, not convinced for sure that Montreal was going to trade him because they do need somebody to play goal. But at the same time, he's a veteran guy. He's got a Stanley Cup to his name. It's a decent contract. He's played well for Montreal, especially in long stretches last year when Price was out. So I can imagine teams would be interested as well. But at this point, doesn't mean he won't be traded. it, but I think that certainly decreases the odds, given the fact there's a pretty good chance he may not play another hockey game before the deadline, and teams might want to see that he's healed and come back and can, not be injury prone the rest of the year before they pick him up. So we'll see where that goes. Hard to say, but we'll discuss the Habs a little bit further here in a couple of moments. We don't have the full extent either on Brad Marchand, but it didn't look good last night when he was injured. Got hit by Garner Hathaway, the Capitals. I don't suspect any kind of supplemental discipline on the play, but it looks like he could have a broken collarbone or a badly injured shoulder. They didn't specify what it was. All Cassidy said was he's going to be out a while, but it did not look good. I know he remained with the team and tried to tough it out. He was on the bench, and when they scored the winning goal, he tried to put his arm up to celebrate, and he couldn't. As soon as it started to go up, he had to put it down, and you could tell he was in considerable discomfort. So to me, it kind of looked like a collarbone issue, but it very well could be shoulder related as well. But it did not look good at all. And, considering how valuable he is to the team and to the entire league, certainly that doesn't bode well for the Boston Bruins. Obviously, I still suspect him to be able to remain in the hunt and likely remain a playoff team, but that's a big hole that they just can't fill there. So we'll see where that goes. I know like a guy like Jake DeBrusk has been wanting to be traded and move along to a new team to get a fresh start, but to keep running into injury issues while they're looking for a deal, and maybe this will create an opportunity for him that he'll be able to play higher in the lineup, and if he does well, maybe they'll have a changing of the heart there, and maybe neither side will want to move along. It's hard to say where that relationship goes, but that could be a benefactor of the Marchand injury, depending on how long he actually ends up being out. Now, as I mentioned as well, there's a significant suspension in the American Hockey League, and even though we mostly focus on the NHL here, I think this could impact the NHL in the future because it could be a precedent-setting situation because it is racially related. So we know that right now the AHL has suspended Christoph Hrabek of the San Jose Barracuda. Now, from what I can gather, he doesn't look like he has been a drafted prospect. I believe he's only under contract with the Sharks organization as part of the Barracuda on an AHL deal. Doesn't appear to have a two-way contract in that regard, where he made a inappropriate racial gesture towards Boko Imama of the Arizona Coyotes. Of course, he's on their farm team now in Tucson, formerly played in Ontario. Of course, Boko is a player I'm quite familiar with. He played his junior hockey close to me here in the St. John Sea Dogs, so I've seen him play a few times. I've seen him a lot, very familiar with him, and this unfortunately is not the first time he's had to deal with this either during his time in the American Hockey League since graduating to the pros a few years back. This 30-game suspension also comes with an educational piece. I'm not sure the quite details there, but it looks as though that the player that's suspended is required to take a class or course on kind of help them learn from their mistakes here, I guess. But the 30 games is much more severe than we've seen in other situations. For example, a few years ago when it first happened to Boko, he ran into a situation with Brendan Manning, and he was only given 5 games. So that's pretty light for a racial slur or racial gesture that's very, very inappropriate. So certainly, at least it looks like the American Hockey League has set some more severe punishments in place for these types of situations. We want to promote that hockey is for everybody, but when you have situations like this, it really sets it back. Of course, Boko is originally, his family immigrated here from Congo in Africa. A great hockey player, very good skater, quick, been working hard in the American Hockey League to try to get himself an opportunity. Hopefully he will here soon with the Coyotes organization, but certainly he doesn't deserve this, doesn't need this. No player does. And, it's just really another unfortunate situation. And hopefully this player can learn from it and realize how bad that is. And it's not appropriate in any way, shape, or form. It's something you really hate to see. But hopefully this will create awareness for other players to maybe realize what things are not appropriate, and hopefully will create a more severe punishment in place for the NHL to follow suit if anything like that should happen again. Because unfortunately, it's hard to say without any confidence that it won't, right? I mean, every time you see something and you hope you raise awareness and people learn from it, and you say, hopefully that never happens again. But it seems like it always does, and that's the hard part, is to get it to go away completely forever appears to be pretty close to impossible. But hopefully it's not something we hear of again for a very long time. Now, before we jump into the rest of the video, I do need to pause for a moment and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Name a better duo than McDavid and Draisaitl this season. I've got one. Manscaped and grooming. That's right, our sponsors at Manscaped, the global leaders in below-the-waist grooming, have all the best tools to clean up your whole act when it comes to your hygiene for men. It's time to skate on the first line with the global leaders here in men's hygiene and join the movement at Manscaped, where you can get the Performance Package 4.0, which includes the Lawnmower 4.0, as well as some fantastic new products just recently launched, including the brand new 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner. This is a terrific product. Allows you to wash your hair in one fell swoop, leaves you smelling great. It has a refined cologne quality fragrance attached. Absolutely phenomenal. And of course, the other new product most recently launched is the premium body wash to kind of complete the set. But that's not all. Manscaped has new products coming out here yet again in January, so you want to stay tuned. The body wash gives you deep hydration, keeps you smelling great, and not only smelling great, but feeling moisturized as well. Join the movement at manscaped.com and use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. That's promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. So thanks very much for watching that promotional content. I do greatly appreciate it. On to the trade rumor section of the day. I want to look at 3 teams, and they're all Canadian teams. Let's start with the Habs. The Montreal Canadiens, of course, are near the basement of the NHL. Just hired themselves a new general manager. Of course, they got Jeff Gorton at the helm there, as well as Vice President of Hockey Operations, working directly under Jeff Molson. And we heard some comments today on a quick radio interview on TSN Radio from the newly appointed GM, Kent Hughes. And it appears as though the Habs are pretty entrenched in trade talks. He said himself that Jeff Gorton had actually engaged in some trade conversations before he was even hired, and he's already in the mix and having some conversations as well, and he's really only been on the job here an extremely short time. So you know that evaluating this roster and getting some turnover is right at the forefront. I mean, some of it is kind of obvious. Like, for example, UFA defenseman Ben Jerard, who's expected to get a pretty good price tag for Montreal, somebody they're not returning, or re-signing, I should say. That should be easy. And now at the same time, what the return is will be the hard part. Many suspect they might be able to land themselves a first-round pick, but another player on the Habs that could be an easier deal to do than some is Artturi Lehkonen. I know I heard Frank Seravalli today talking about this on his podcast, saying how he feels Lehkonen could be one of the first to go. They were talking about who might be the first Habs player to be traded under this new regime heading towards the deadline. Between he and Jason Gregor and the other host here, Tyler Yaremchuk, we're all talking about in the DFL Rundown. And really the other two thought Sherratt might be the more likely, whereas Seravalli thinks maybe Lehkonen, and I think he could be right. He's a player who has a little bit of a unique skill set on that team. We know he can kill penalties. We know he can work up and down your lineup. He got some great playoff experience last year. Not super strong offensively, but pretty decent. A team like the Rangers or the Lightning could very well be into the main teams that would make sense. There previously was a link to the Rangers being interested in this guy, but they've been linked to a lot of players, so it's hard to say what they actually end up doing here. But Seravalli went on to mention that he feels a guy like Lehkonen could provide a similar type of impact like we saw Coleman do when he was traded from the Devils to the Lightning. Ended up getting there as getting 2 Stanley Cups. Lehkonen's a pending RFA, so it's not somebody that they would necessarily be a rental, right? They could re-sign him, and it's not going to cost them a super expensive contract to get it done. So Lehkonen is a player on Montreal that very well will create a lot of interest, and it's just hard to say exactly where he goes if he is moved. But they could decide he's a part of the solution, but at the same time, depending on if there's enough interest, they might have to make that call. But I mean, Rangers, Lightning are certainly a couple teams. Even a team like Pittsburgh comes to mind too. They're always looking to add different depth. They might prefer to not to trade him within the Eastern Conference, but at the same time, it's all about getting the best offer. And those are the teams that kind of jump to the forefront. If you look at the NHL right now, it's not really balanced between the two conferences. A lot of the league's top teams are in the East, so they might have an easier time trading within the conference, even though that might not be the most preferred. As I mentioned, Jake Allen also out 8 weeks. He was expected to be a guy to get a lot of interest, especially a team like Edmonton who desperately needs a goalie, but now he's going to be out such long term that that's probably not a possibility for them. Doesn't mean he won't be dealt, but I would think that it's a situation that's going to be risky because teams are likely not going to be able to see him play again before the deadline. And we've actually seen some really good performances lately from Samuel Montembeault, who I know hasn't been the most consistent during his brief time in Montreal. But maybe they decide to move on from Allen and maybe Price in the offseason. They have Montembeault. They also have a Caden Primo waiting in the wings to move up too. So hard to say what the Habs do in that regard. If there's going to be any goalies moved in the short term, I think Jake's probably the main one. A Carey Price deal, if it is going to be something that they want to explore, more likely would happen in the offseason. But I would suspect there's lots of other players on this team that could be moved. We've heard comments from guys like Josh Anderson saying he signed a long-term deal in Montreal. He wants to stay. Obviously that's what he signed for. Tyler Toffoli, another name who expressed interest to stay in Montreal, but because of his contract and his prior history, again, going to get lots of interest, so it might not be easy for them to make that decision, but the Habs are certainly going to be easy, and we know that the new GM, Ken Hughes, on the first day of the job, is already engaged in trade talk, so we'll see where this goes. It might not take too long to start seeing some movement in the Habs organization. Now, when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks, there appears to be a lot of trade chatter around JT Miller. I don't get the sense, though, that it's Rutherford or the Canucks kind of shopping him. I don't think that's the case at all. I think there's a lot of interest from other teams, including the Rangers, who were apparently very much linked to this player who they're very familiar with, considering he played there before. Miller's a guy with another year on his contract. Doesn't make an obscene amount of money, but gets really good value. Real kind of hard-nosed player who can provide you a spark at times. Real solid career here that he's had, especially the last few years, as it seems to be getting better with age almost. But Miller is a guy that's certainly going to generate a lot of interest. Now, the Canucks ended up paying a first-round pick to get him from the Lightning a few years back, so I don't know what they'd be looking for in return, but there is a lot of talk that they're getting a ton of interest on this guy. I don't suspect we're going to see other moves out of the Canucks in the short term. I mean, they've done well under Bruce Boudreau. They're not a guarantee to get back in the playoff hunt here, but at least it's possible. They climb their way back, so they're at least somewhat in the conversation. If they can continue stringing together a few more wins, then they will have a shot at this. So it's a little bit surprising. That's why I don't think they're shopping him. But if a deal comes along, they may have to not pass it up. It's kind of where my head is at when it comes to Miller. I'm not convinced entirely that he does get traded. It just seems like they're getting a lot of calls and a lot of interest on this player. So if somebody ponies up the right offer, if it is the Rangers and they want to offer up a guy like Kravtsov, for example, and some other picks, maybe there's another defensive prospect in there because they have lots of those too. That might be hard for Vancouver to pass up. So even though they're winning under Boudreau and have got to turn things around, wouldn't be shocking to see that they still make a deal and actually end up subtracting short-term on their roster. Now, on the Oilers, I mean, they've been a hot topic here, given their massive losing streak here as of late. But you know what? There's a lot of talk, a lot of articles today. You could just about every NHL reporter is talking about what their options are between the pipes. But I did see a couple of new names mentioned today in different articles that might pose interest as well. A combination of places. We heard Sarah Valley talk about it on his podcast. Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merritt talked about it on the latest 32 Thoughts. And I believe there was another one as well from Sportsnet, looking at their options. And another couple names here. Chris Driedger is one from Seattle that came up as a potential one, as well as Georgiev with the Rangers organization. The thought process behind Driedger is pretty simple. He hasn't had the greatest season, but certainly he has shown in the past he can be a great goalie. He bailed out the Panthers a lot last year when Bobrovsky was struggling. And the Kraken are not heading towards the playoffs. They have Grubauer under contract long-term, so I don't think Driedger's really going to be in a spot to be the starter. Plus, they've got Joey Daccord waiting in the wings for a chance at a regular spot in the NHL. So moving Driedger does seem like a real, reasonable thing, but he's going to have a little bit more term. So that might be good or bad for the Oilers, depending on how they feel about the goalie. Clearly, they don't want to give up a first-round pick or something for somebody that's a rental, but if he comes in, he's still young enough that he could be their goalie of the future, and he's got 2 more years on his contract. So, you know, that's a possibility that could make sense. And the Kraken are a team who could take on income for salary cap purposes. So certainly taking Koskinen off their hands would be possible. Whereas just about every other team, they would need a different kind of deal where Koskinen would have to go somewhere else, right? So Seattle might be a place for Holland to turn his attention to, and Driedger just might be that guy that they zone in on. Or they could talk to the Rangers about Georgiev. Even though he's done well, he's made it known in the past that he was looking for a trade so he could get more of an opportunity. And again, this is a player that they could see as their goalie of the future. They don't really have a lot in the goalie prospect system outside of Stuart Skinner. Hard to say what he's going to evolve into. If they have two solid goalies down the road, that's not a good problem. That's not a bad problem to have. So certainly Georgiev might be a guy that they look to, but the Rangers, like I said, might not be the most reluctant to make that move, considering they don't want to mess with their team, considering how good they're doing. But they might see an opportunity to get a player that helps them in another regard. We know Igor Shesterkin can carry a heavy workload, and they should be able to bring in another goaltender, to kind of replace him. But at the same time, they would not want Koskinen, so I don't know how they would make that work. They need a third party involved. And of course, some other goalies that have been linked to before, Korpisalo and Hudobin, but they've had opportunity to get those guys and they haven't taken advantage, so I'm not convinced that they really want to do that. The other more logical choice in Dallas would be Braden Holtby. However, you know what? Holtby is not going to be moving out of Dallas anytime soon, I don't think, until they know for sure that they're not heading towards the playoffs. But they have Holtby, they have Hudobin, they have Ottinger. Clearly Ottinger's the guy of the future. But you know what? Dallas is not convinced yet that they're not a playoff team. So until they are, I don't see them trading Holtby. But that could be a deal for later. But they need something, and they need it now. I know everybody has their own opinion on why the Oilers appear to be broken right now. But look at this. They've been 2-11-2 in their last 15 games since December the 1st. And they have a league worst save percentage of .856. So you can say what you want, what your opinions are, and nobody's necessarily right or wrong. But you can make an argument that McDavid and Draisaitl need to play better defense, or at least some defense at times, and maybe that's not entirely wrong. We've talked about secondary scoring. That's coming and it's gone. It's not always the issue. But you know what? They need a big save at the right moments. And if you watched the game last night with the Florida Panthers, they absolutely destroyed the Oilers 6-0. A lot of those goals, 2 or 3 of them came late on power plays when it was already out of hand. But the first few goals, like 2 out of the first 3, Koskinen should have absolutely had. They were bad goals. And I think like the Oilers are in a situation where they've given up the first goal of the game. I think it's like 23 out of the last 27 games. And when you don't get that big save, they're so fragile right now that they're becoming deflated. They get frustrated and they don't play their best. So it's all up here, but it's all because of the lack of confidence between the pipes. One little mistake, a goal goes in, and they feel like they can't come back. They're chasing the game, and it's really hard to play that way. So at the end of the day, to me, goaltending is by far the issue. If they can have a goalie between the pipes that they feel more confident in and can get them a big save when they need it, they will play better on the ice for the rest of their systems. They know how to do a lot of other things that are not going well right now, like the PK, which was great for a long time. Suddenly it's been bad. It's all up in between the ears, but because it's a lack of confidence and their frustrated level is boiled over. So to me, that all boils back to, it's not like it's all goaltending, but it's such a big part of it. They can kind of tweak the rest of it, but that's where they have to start, in my opinion. The numbers don't lie. They're absolutely atrocious. You could say the team in front of them is not the most helpful at times, and you're probably not wrong. But at the same time, like, you need a guy between the pipes like Bobrovsky, like we've seen from Price and all these all-star goaltenders who once in a while just steal one for you. They can't catch a break. They need that right now, and that would make all the difference in the world. Marc-Andre Fleury would be an awesome choice for them. I doubt that's going to happen because of how much money he makes, and he doesn't appear to be ready or willing to move on from Chicago just yet. So we'll see where this goes with the Oilers. But the Oilers something has to give, whether it's a goalie or a coaching change or something. Something has to happen, and it has to happen soon before this season falls apart completely on them. So let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.